John Maury is the Director of Strategic TPA Relations over with Principal, where he focuses on building sales and distribution with key TPA administrator firms like Definiti. And he started in the retirement industry back in 2008 and has vast experience improving TPA sales and integration on multiple record-keeping platforms. John, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen here, and thanks everyone for joining today. I have a very topical session on navigating market value adjustments I want to share, and I've jotted down 5 objectives for this session that I hope everyone will take away. First, just want to review the types of investments that are affected by market value adjustments. Then we'll talk about what exactly is a market value adjustment. Then switch over to why is this suddenly an issue? Why do I say this is a topical session? What your options are when you do are dealing with a market value adjustment. We'll look at a quick case study, and then we'll wrap things up with best practices. So first, what kind of accounts or investments are we talking about here? So fixed accounts, guaranteed accounts, stable value accounts. They go by different names, but what all these types of investments have in common is they're insurance products where essentially the insurance company is holding the assets on a general account of the insurance company. And the idea from the insurance company standpoint is you're investing these assets in usually shorter, intermediate term, high quality government bonds. And the insurance company wants to make some spread on the assets. So let's say the insurance company is making 5% on those assets and then paying 3% to the participants. Well, the spread on that would be 2% for the insurance company. So that's what they all have in common. I should also note, stable value accounts should not be confused with stable value funds. They are different. The difference there with the stable value fund is essentially a mutual fund that also has invested in high quality, short-term, intermediate term government bonds, but it's basically in a mutual fund vehicle with an insurance wrapper on it. So different from these other types of accounts we're talking about. However, stable value funds also are relevant to this conversation because they may not have the same type of market value adjustments, but they very well may have a 12-month put that we should talk about as well. So first, what is a market value adjustment? A market value adjustment usually occurs when there is a plan level liquidation event. So a plan's invested in one of these accounts we just talked about, and the plan needs to liquidate all those assets. Of course, I should note, every contract is different, and some contracts an individual participant, if their assets are significant enough, could trigger a market value adjustment. But typically we see these at a plan level liquidation event. And what happens in a market value adjustment is the book value of the account is adjusted to its market value. Now, if its market value is higher, well, that's great. Everyone's celebrating, no problem. But if the market value is lower than the book value and the account holders are having a negative adjustment, well, that's where you can have some problems and have some issues that you need to sidestep. We should also note a 12-month put. That's when we're referring or is dealing with a stable value fund. That can be up to a 12-month notification period that the fund can require in a liquidation event. So not the exact same thing as a market value adjustment, but another issue we need to be on the lookout for. And finally, why are these MVAs and 12-month puts suddenly a major issue in the business? Well, that can be attributed to the interest rates we've seen over the past 10 years or so. Over the past couple of years since 2022. This slide here shows over the past 10 years, and you can see since early 2022, we've seen pretty steady, significant increases in interest rates to the point now where interest rates are as high as they've been since 2001. So you may be wondering, well, what does this have to do with my client's assets in a 401k plan? Well, that goes back to Finance 101. We all know interest rates go up, bond prices go down. Interest rates go up, bond prices go interest rates go down, bond prices go up. So this inverse relationship is the key issue to keep in mind here, because as we said, these underlying holdings in these accounts are short-term, intermediate-term bonds. So in a rising interest rate environment, the price of those bonds is going down, which means if the insurance company has a big liquidation event, they're having to go sell all of those underlying holdings at a big discount. And so in order to protect the overall account, that is why you have a market value adjustment. Otherwise, in order to generate the necessary cash to pay everyone out at book value, you'd have to take essentially principal or interest from other investors. And so you can imagine how well that would work out. So that's why we're currently in this environment. And it's going to take a little while until interest rates start going back down or until the underlying holdings kind of turn over within these accounts. You're going to be running into these situations anytime you're moving a plan or trying to liquidate the assets in a plan that have significant assets in one of these general or one of these fixed accounts, stable value accounts, whatever it may be. So let's turn to a case study here just to kind of see how this plays out. So we'll assume we have a $3 million plan. It's got $250,000 in its fixed account. That fixed account is currently paying a 1.5% crediting rate. And the plan sponsor, for whatever reasons, they decide it's time to move to a new platform. And so they have a host of wholesalers come through and talk about their record keeping platform.
Seems we have a technical difficulty right now with John.
That provider.
John, we lost you for a second.
Oh, am I still coming through?
Yep, you're back. I'm going to ask you if you could, let's continue. If we have a trouble, I may actually shut your webcam off just to conserve bandwidth. But you can continue, please.
Okay, gotcha. So should I start over with the case study? I'm not sure when I cut out.
You cut out around the 250 fixed.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So they have the $3 million plan, $250,000 of that is in the fixed account. And we'll just assume that those assets are getting a 1.5% crediting rate paid on those assets. So the plan sponsor decides they want to move to a new platform. So they interview some various record keepers, and ultimately they decide, just making up a record keeper here, they decide they're going to go with principal. So they start the process, sign the paperwork, everyone celebrates. You start the implementation process. Phone calls are scheduled. A liquidation notice is sent to the existing provider, the existing platform, and everything's going along great. And then a few weeks later, an email shows up in everyone's inbox about this market value adjustment. And now all of a sudden we have an issue on our hands. In this scenario, we're going to say that there's a 10% market value adjustment, which means that's a $25,000 negative adjustment on those assets in the fixed account. So instead of 250,000 moving over, it would only be 225,000 moving over to the new provider. So once this scenario arises, you've got to figure out what is the best kind of way to sidestep this issue or deal with it. So let's walk through some of the options you have to work through with the plan sponsor. So the first one is proceeding as planned. Now, sometimes if the market value adjustment isn't significant, they may say this is fine, we're not that worried about it, we're going to move on. I will note some plan sponsors and participants in plans have been able to go in and individually move assets out of those accounts beforehand. However, some contracts restrict that, and they can have a look back clause. Some people call it a stampede clause to prevent the assets from kind of flying out of that account before the liquidation, the plan level liquidation event occurs. So just depending on the contract, sometimes that can work, but sometimes they're contractually the market value adjustment could still apply. So that's option number one, proceed as planned, see if there's maybe some ways you can sidestep it without any other issues here. Option number two, ask a new provider if they have a solution. So there's two key solutions that most, I should say at least insurance company backed record keeping platforms can offer. The first is to cover the market value adjustment. So that 225,000 in our scenario would come over and the new provider replenishes the account up to its book value of $250,000. And in exchange for doing that, an asset charge could be put on the whole plan for a, say, 2-3 year period to recoup that $25,000 buyout, if you will, of the fixed account assets. So it's still, you're still feeling the pain from that buyout or from replenishing the account, but it spreads it out over a few years, and you're not taking that direct hit right up front with a $25,000 adjustment. The other option that's particularly of interest lately with rising interest rates and being able to get higher crediting rates in fixed accounts at certain providers is, instead of applying an asset charge to the whole plan to recoup the cost of the market value adjustment, you can simply reduce the crediting rate on the new fixed account with the new provider for a set number of years. So in our scenario, let's say it's a 120 basis points for 3 years, or 120 basis point reduction in the crediting rate for 3 years to recoup that cost. Well, if the current or the new provider is offering 6% crediting rate, and I'll just put it as an aside, Principal as of December 1st will have a fixed account with a 6% crediting rate for new business. So even after you reduce that 120 basis points off that 6%, you're still at 4.8% crediting rate, which, if you remember, we were at 1.5% with the last provider. So you're still, even after the reduction in the crediting rate to recoup the cost of the market value adjustment, you're still far above the crediting rate you were before. So this is a great solution if it works out, where the market value adjustment isn't too big to, sometimes it's just too much for this option. But as long as you're within the parameters and you can make this work, this can be a great solution to also keep the cost of replenishing that account confined with the fixed account investors. And the third option is transfer assets at book value over whatever time period is required. So sometimes you can see that where it'll be a 5-year drawdown period where assets will come over 20% per year for 5 years to the new provider. Now, it's not ideal in all cases, because the participants may be confused as to why some of their assets stayed back at the other provider. However, with the TPA, you can reconcile those accounts for testing and filing purposes every year. And with some providers, Principal included, the TPA can upload once a year those account values of the assets that were held back at the old provider. So those participants can still see those assets that were left behind, and that can be updated each year, and they can see that on the participant website, on their statements, on the smartphone app, just to give some comfort that those assets are still there, they haven't been lost, and they can see that as a part of their overall financial picture. So those are your 3 kind of key ways to go with this. With that, we'll switch over and just look at best practices here. So the first thing is really obvious, but gets overlooked all the time, and that's just reviewing investments early in the proposal process. And I can say now in 2023, if you are looking at a plan and considering a move for that plan, and they have significant assets sitting in a fixed account, guaranteed account, stable value fund, whatever it may be, there's almost certainly going to be some kind of a market value adjustment or a 12-month put. So don't get caught off guard on it. Just know up front, it's not a deal breaker. It's just something you want to be aware of so that you're not kind of finding out about it on the fly. Once you identify that this plan does have significant assets in one of these accounts, discussing the options with the TPA and wholesaler is critical. The wholesaler can run the scenario for you that I just went through, showing you what it would be to replenish that account, what the asset charge on the plan may be, or what the reduction in the crediting rate could be, or discuss options on leaving the assets behind over the 3, 4, 5-year period and having the TPA, like Definiti, upload those asset values each year. And once you've figured out what the best option is for that plan, you can present it to the plan sponsor, make sure you, the wholesaler, and the TPA are all on the same page on what the best solution is going to be. And then, of course, as always, you want to ensure you've documented the decision and the research you did into it for the due diligence file to ensure if there's questions down the road, everyone knows what happened and why it happened and what the terms were. And I can say another best practice that's not included in here, but I'll add as well, is getting your hands on the contract, the guaranteed account, stable value account, whatever it may be, getting your hands on that contract as well early on to make sure you understand the terms of the contract. And that will help in those discussions with the TPA and wholesaler about your options. So with that, it's a pretty dense topic, a lot going on here, but I will open it up for questions if there are any out there.